The Roman army reached the peak of its power in the 1st and 2nd centuries. Roman legionaries and auxiliary expanded the empire by fire and sword, repeatedly engaging in bloody battles with a variety of opponents. As a rule, the battle was preceded by a rousing speech by the commander, after which the troops engaged in battle. The battle was started by units armed with bows, pilums, darts, and slings, as well as catapults and ballistae. Firing with throwing weapons was aimed not so much to damage the enemy as to upset his ranks and prepare the attack of heavy infantry. In the heyday of the Roman Empire, legion artillery was very numerous. The legion had 55 carroballista, 1 per centuria, and 10 onagra, 1 per cohort. First opened fire-throwing machines, shooting at the greatest distance. Then, as the enemy approached, in the battle gradually entered the archers, slingers and other shooters. In the period of the early empire, such units could consist of specialized units. Units of archers represented separate cohorts, of which there is a lot of evidence. There is some evidence that legionaries were armed with slingshots and could also act as archers if necessary, but in the main, archery units were recruited in auxiliary units. It is known that two armies could fight for a long time with throwing weapons without engaging in hand-to-hand combat. If the enemy proved to be stubborn and persistent, heavy infantry entered the battle. The first line could contain both legionaries and cohorts of auxiliarians. The battle was a clash of two lines, directly involved, in which were directly involved only soldiers who stood in the first rows. The fact that the formation was united and disciplined is indicated by numerous sources. There are several variants of the space occupied by a legionary during the battle. Polybius writes that one soldier had 6 feet at the front of his squad. Bagesius states that each legionary occupied a space of only 3 feet. Apparently, we are talking about the characteristics of the folded and unfolded formation. Before launching an attack, warriors shouted a battle cry and threw pilums at the enemy, which were armed with legionaries and many cohorts of auxiliarians. The device of the Roman pilum allowed, when hitting the shield of the enemy, to leave the latter unprotected. Getting stuck in the shield, the pilum made it impossible to use it, and the enemy was forced to throw the shield. During the battle there was not always convergence, and the enemy had enough time to pick up the darts and throw them back. Therefore, the design of Roman pilums was calculated so that when they hit the shield, they broke in half and could not be used again. Given that most barbarians were only heavily armed in the front ranks, such an attack would cause confusion, stopping and breaking formation before a clash. Sometimes a volley of darts could cause the enemy to flee. The casualties were small but had a significant effect on the barbarians' morale. Ideally, after throwing pilums, Romans should have started a vigorous hand-to-hand attack, not allowing the enemy to rally the ranks. The duration of the battle, as a rule, was small, known only exceptional cases, when it went all day. It should be noted, however, that it was not hand-to-hand combat that lasted the whole day, but ranged battles. Contrary to popular belief that the Romans primarily sought hand-to-hand combat, battles were often reduced to fighting at a distance using a variety of throwing weapons, arrows, darts and slings. If the enemy withstood the fire and attack, the Romans, stacked with shields and backed by their shoulders, piled on him. Most closed the 2 first ranks. At this time the 3rd and 4th ranks continued to throw darts. The Romans concluded that it was more practical to use several battle lines rather than form one deep formation, which was the norm for other ancient armies. Multiple lines could be used in a variety of ways, including large-scale tactical maneuvering of troops from auxiliary lines. This is what happened at the battles of Metaurus, on the Great Plains, at Zama, at Cynocephali, at the Second Battle of Chaeronea, and at Pharsalus. The primary purpose of the multiple line system, however, was to provide a mechanism for replacing the tired and bringing reinforcements into battle. Livy explicitly describes this process in The Manipulative Legion, although he anachronistically places it in an earlier context. Caesar mentions how fresh cohorts replaced tired cohorts at the battles of Ilerda and Pharsalus. Ancient authors repeatedly argue that the ability to replace tired men with fresh ones was an advantage that gave the Romans an opportunity to overpower an enemy of equal or even superior numbers, but lined up in a single line. Fighting against predominantly foot armies, Roman commanders tried to take the initiative in their own hands and attack first, choosing a weak spot in the enemy's fighting order. Heavy infantry struck a massive blow, taking advantage of the depth of the formation and the ability to replace the tired in the front ranks. During the hand-to-hand attack, the back rows piled on the front rows, trying to crush and break the enemy formation. During movement, the Roman training and the division of the formation into small parts did not allow the legion line to break up. Cohesion during maneuvers provided banners, which soldiers had to constantly watch. Since the time of the military reforms of Maria, the unity of the Roman army was strengthened by the keepers of military shrines, banners and eagles, and later, images of emperors. Being during the battle in the front ranks, they raised the spirit of the soldiers, made them more courageous to fight, overcoming the most desperate resistance of barbarian groups. With military signs was associated with the religious life of legionaries, shrines deified, believed in their supernatural powers. The main place in the army religious life was occupied by the cults of emperors and supreme Roman deities. Finally, as the military historian Flavius Vegesius Renatus reports, battle banners during battle served as reference points for the rank and file, being one of the varieties of mute signals given by officers to their subordinates. Many Roman generals skillfully used the faith of soldiers in the symbols of military power of Rome to achieve victory. Appian reports how in the Battle of Orchomenos mounted hordes of Mithridates VI began to push the legionaries, who were frozen in front of a strong opponent. Then the commander of the troops, Sulla, grabbed the legion eagle, dragged the soldiers into the attack and defeated the enemy. It is known that this way more than once did in Caesar. According to the testimony of Vegetius, the main sign of the entire legion was an eagle, which carried the eagle carrier. In the case of loss of the shrine, the military unit was disbanded. On the lower Danube so happened during the Dacian Wars of Emperor Domitian, when the prefect of the Praetorium Cornelius Fusc at the head of the 5th Legion of the Lark was ambushed in the Carpathian Mountains, losing his head and the army. Only after 20 years, the victorious soldiers of Trajan were able to return the proud symbol of Roman power. It can be assumed that all the standard bearers were well-tested, courageous men of great seniority. Caesar in Notes on the Civil War tells about the feat of one of his eagle-bearers in the Battle of Dyracia. Already deprived of the help of officers, who died, severely wounded and losing strength, he did not let go of his eagle to the end, extending it only to the approaching familiar cavalrymen. After the enemy ceased resistance and fled, the pursuit began, during which the loser suffered much greater losses than during the battle. Usually the pursuit was conducted with the involvement of infantry and cavalry, very carefully due to the danger of ambushes. Then at farther distances, when the enemy dispersed, one cavalry was sent to pursue the fleeing fighters. The destruction of the enemy continued until darkness fell. Convinced of the defeat of the enemy army, the Roman soldiers proceeded to plunder its wagons. This was engaged in one part of the army, while the other stood guard. After that there was an organized division of the booty. The main factors of success of the Roman army were the excellent quality of training of commanders and privates, wide use of various banners and military relics, high morale, skillful tactical formation and maneuvering in battle, as well as initiative during hostilities, the desire to impose direct combat and attack first.